I'd like to call the meeting of the Webster Water Sewer Commission to order. It's April 6th. I would like to begin by, if we could stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're going to start with a presentation by Ty and Bond having to do with our PFAS mitigation plan. Danielle?
Hi everyone, my name is Danielle Texera. I'm project manager with Ty and Bond.
Danielle, could you use the microphone? It's being recorded, so.
Hi everyone, my name is Danielle Texera with Ty and Bond. I am a project manager, and today I will be discussing the status of the PFAS mitigation for Webster. So this is my second time here. We had a previous public meeting back in August, so we'll cover some updates on how things are going. So what is the problem? The problem is an emergent contaminant called per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as PFAS. These substances can be found in everyday consumer goods, such as dental floss and packaging, popcorn packaging, makeup, as well as non-stick cookware. And exposure to these substances is harmful to humans and can cause cancer, thyroid disease, high cholesterol, decreased fertility. The extent of the human health effects are still being studied at this point. So PFAS has also been found in our drinking water sources, and that has entered our sources through fire suppression products, as well as industrial manufacturing. So Massachusetts has drinking water regulations for these substances which are found in the drinking water, and that regulation limit is at 20 parts per trillion. And to give you an idea of perspective on that number, a part per trillion is one droplet of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which is 660,000 gallons. So it's very, very, very small concentration that we're trying to detect here. And for Massachusetts, the 20 parts per trillion limit is the summation of 6 specific PFAS substances, and there are thousands of these substances, but Massachusetts is currently just regulating the sum of 6 of them. EPA recently came out with a proposed national primary drinking water regulation, and that was in March of 2023. And as you can see from this table, there are 2 compounds, PFOA and PFOS, which the proposed maximum contaminant level is 4 parts per trillion. So that is significantly less than what Massachusetts' current standard of the 20 parts per trillion is. But also keep in mind that those are single substances and it's not the combination of all 6. So the EPA proposed standard also has a hazard index of 1 for 4 different PFAS substances, and those are a health-based related fraction, so it's a calculated MCL. And those are proposed to be less than 1. So these proposed regulatory limits set by EPA are currently open for public comment, and that public comment period will be ending on May 30th, 2023. We anticipate that it's probably another year before these regulations become finalized, and at which point Mass DEP will then update their maximum contaminant levels, and those maximum contaminant levels will be at least, if not more stringent than what EPA maximum contaminant levels are. So this slide shows a summary of what has been detected in Webster. The top table shows what the regulatory standards are currently. And I didn't mention, but EPA current standard for the PFOA and PFOS is 70 parts per trillion, which that level has not been exceeded in Webster, but the Webster has exceeded the maximum contaminant level for mass DEP at the Bigelow site in the raw and finished water. But that well has been offline since August of 2022, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And this is a graphical representation of the data over the past year, beginning in January of 2022. So the top red line is the maximum contaminant level for mass DEP, which you can see the Bigelow water is well above that at 28, and the standard's 20. And the second red line in the middle is the action level for mass DEP, and that's set at 10 parts per trillion. And above that limit is when additional sampling is required. And I also put in there on the green line the EPA proposed new level of 4 parts per trillion, but that, again, is not the PFOS-6, it's for 2 compounds plus a hazard index of 4 others, but just to give a comparison of the regulatory limits. And right now, the Memorial Beach does not exceed those limits, but it is approaching or has approached them in the past. And we don't know at this point what mass DEP maximum contaminant levels will be in the future. So this slide is showing the Webster water system. There's the 2 sites for sources, the Bigelow Road site, which is the northwest corner of the map, and then Memorial Beach is southeast of that. And these 2 sites are about 2 miles apart. The Bigelow well site is composed of 1 well and 1 pump station, and it's offline currently and has only been used in emergencies if water capacity is necessary. The Memorial Beach site has 6 groundwater wells and 2 pump stations, as well as 1 treatment plant that was added in 2019 for iron and manganese removal. And that is the primary source of water, or it has been since 2019. The maximum day demand is more than 2.13 million gallons per day for Webster. And it's crucial that we have both of these plants in operation in order to meet that level. Even though Memorial Beach has a design capacity of 2.75, there are occasions where maintenance is needed on wells, or if a well suddenly fails, and there will be problems that we can run into if we can't meet that day demand. So it's vital that both of these plants are able to operate. So in addition to PFAS, there is also iron and manganese at higher levels at the Bigelow site, which currently doesn't have treatment for iron and manganese. Iron and manganese are 2 common elements found in the Earth's crust, and they're classified as secondary water quality parameters. These iron and manganese in the dissolved form, when they oxidize, they cause precipitation, which results in discolored water and build up on fixtures. And currently, the raw and finished water exceed the manganese secondary maximum contaminant level of 0.05 milligrams per liter, but it is below the iron secondary max contaminant level of 0.3. And iron and manganese would need to be removed prior to PFAS treatment at the Bigelow site. So the plan is to construct 2 water treatment plants, 1 at each of these sites, 1 at Memorial, adjacent to the existing water treatment plant, 1 at Bigelow. That also includes iron and manganese pretreatment. And the method of treatment for PFAS that we'll be designing for is granular activated carbon. And with this method, the water will pass over the granular activated carbon and absorb the contaminant, the PFAS. So again, Bigelow Road will have removal of PFAS as well as iron and manganese, and will provide for the necessary redundancy in the town, especially when water demand is high in the summer months. And Memorial Beach water treatment plant will be for removal of PFAS. This is the proposed site plan for the Bigelow Road water treatment site. In the gray rectangle, that is the proposed building. And then I have a couple arrows pointing to the existing well house building and the existing pump station. And all the newly paved area for the drive. There will also be some underground tanks for backwash wastewater. And then we'll also be installing a new replacement well for redundancy in order to get that capacity. And these are a couple renderings of what the proposed plant might look like. So we have a couple of elevation views, and if you, on the upper left corner, you can see the new proposed building in relation to the two existing buildings on site. And here's a proposed site plan, floor plan for the new building. So prior to entering this building, we'll go through an aeration tower, and that will adjust pH prior to the GAC filters. It will go through it will go through the green sand or biological iron and manganese filters to remove the iron and manganese, and then travel through the GAC filters for PFAS removal. This is the proposed site plan for Memorial Beach. Again, the gray triangle is the proposed new building, and then there's an arrow showing the existing building on site. Those rectangles in front of the building are for stormwater controls. They'll collect stormwater from the site, but they will be installed below the driveway, so you won't be seeing them on the site. And here are a couple renderings of the proposed building in relation to that existing building. The PFAS filters are a lot taller than the filters needed for iron and manganese removal. They're about 28 feet. So you can see the building height is a little bit taller compared to that existing structure. And the proposed Memorial Beach floor plan is a lot simpler because it's only for PFAS removal, since the site already has the iron and manganese removal. So we'll be using the existing facilities for the packed aeration tower, followed by the green sand filters, and then through the GAC filters before it goes out to distribution. As I mentioned before, the treatment technology for PFAS that we're looking at is GAC filtration. These filters have been installed and are currently being installed in several surrounding communities, and I've listed a few over there: Dudley, Townsend, Dracut, Littleton, Tingsboro, Acton, Groton, Pepperell, Hudson, and Stowe. The other technology that we're looking into for iron and manganese removal, there are two that we're looking at now: the green sand plus filtration or biological filtration. We are currently doing some pilot testing. It's actually going to start next week to determine which one is the best option for the water quality that we have. So the project funding approach, so we submitted an application into Mass DEP State Revolving Fund. Webster did make the draft intended use plan for this project, and so it is proposed to be funded through SRF on that. The SRF loan is a 20-year construction loan with 0% interest, and there is the opportunity for principal forgiveness, and we believe right now that would be a minimum of 19.8%. We won't know exact numbers for some time, but we are currently awaiting the final IUP list to be drafted. And Mike will be presenting on water rate study after this presentation. So these two tables show the proposed project budget. Budget capital cost for construction for the two treatment plants is $25 million with engineering allowance and contingency. The total anticipated cost is $33 million, which is all SRF eligible. We anticipate that the operation and maintenance cost at this point in time is around $500,000 per year. But note that those costs are based on our 25% design, and we will have to update depending on which type of filtration process we're going with Bigelow and other factors. For the PFAS media, we anticipate, based on our piloting, that the changeout will occur of that media every 3 years. So that $300,000 cost is to, for the new media, the disposal of the old media, and for sampling. And this table is a anticipated project schedule. So we're currently in the design phase. We anticipate that we will be at 90% design by October of 2023, which is also the time which we have to submit the SRF financial application for the project. We anticipate going out to bid in March of 2024, and construction we anticipate will begin in summer or fall of 2024 with a substantial completion date of the summer of 2026. And that substantial completion date is all dependent on supply chain and lead times for materials. So that is subject to change. I just wanted to make note that the Webster Water Department has been very diligent in keeping up with all of these new regulatory compliances for PFAS. And really, Webster is ahead of the game. EPA just released their proposed regulatory limits in March, and because of the diligence with managing this PFAS mitigation plan, Webster is already in the design phase and has been set up nicely for procurement of the construction funding. So I just want to thank everyone for their time, and I'll open up for questions. The gentleman.
When the treatment plant was implemented, how much of the PFAS would be removed?
We are anticipating we can get down to 0. We don't know for sure, but that's what the intent of design will be. In order to meet those changes and what the regulatory limits are, the effect that will have on the plant is that you will just need to replace your media more frequently. That answer?
I thought I had originally heard that the federal limit was going to be 0 parts per trillion. Are you saying that they came out with a 4 instead?
So the maximum contaminant level goal is 0. That's what the goal is, but the enforceable limit is the 4.
And what happens? So they're going to. So you're estimating that they might start enforcing this in 2024. We won't have our plant done for 2 years after that. So what would the potential?
So currently the Memorial site, it has lower PFAS concentrations, and that they're below the limits at this point. So that will be used until we can get the plant constructed.
I thought your slide showed that we were a little over 5 at Memorial Beach. That slide you showed originally with the green line on it.
Yeah, I'll get that up.
Danielle, isn't the EPA standard targeted for 2026? So they haven't even proposed the standard officially yet. They have to have hearings, and then after the hearings, the target date is 2026. So we would have till then to get the plant in place, and, I mean, we've expedited this, but essentially, the plant would come online just about the time that the standards would come into play, assuming that, that timeline doesn't slip for the EPA. Does that sound right?
Can I add a little bit to
Sure.
that? Jeff Faulkner, also from Time Bond. The way that the federal regulations work is that right now it's in draft mode, and then it will become final, but then there'll be a compliance period after that. So we don't know exactly when, but you can imagine, Webster's not alone. There's literally, hundreds of thousands of water systems across the country that are going to have to do this, and they're going to have some compliance period.
And the last question I had was, it sounds like we're measuring 6 of these components added together. Are we going to be able to measure the individual ones, because the federal limits are for individual components?
So right now, those lab reports do come back as individual compounds, and they're just added. So yes, we will be able to.
If you review our annual CCR, we did post those other limits. Obviously, they're still unregulated, but they are on our annual CCR.
Will the system only remove those 6, and what if they come back in 10 years and say, okay, these other PFAS?
So we assume that the GAC can remove many of those compounds. We don't obviously test for all of them. I think there's over like 9,000 of the compounds. So those 6 have been selected based on risk assessment at this point. But again, the GAC will absorb those substances, and depending on the chain length, they do a better or worse job. So we'll just have more breakthrough sooner if it doesn't catch it all at the beginning.
I don't know this, but are they going to regulate the use of these components, these substances? Because if we continue to use them,
Right. I know that, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they have implemented like industrial manufacture to decrease the amount of usage of those chemicals.
What, you mentioned different products that we use, those compounds, of these 6 compounds, what kind of products are those used in? And would there be other compounds included also used in those?
Yeah, so anything that's like waterproof or the nonstick cooking pans are all the PFAS compounds. I don't know specifically which ones are in which products, but like I said, I don't have a great answer for that.
But just to chime in, Mike Schrader, and talk about the rates, but there's primary contaminants, secondary contaminants, and then emerging, and they're always watching and developing and things that start to, they see studies, and that's what happened with PFAS, that it became awareness, and then it gets pushed into the regulations to protect the population. So it's a constantly evolving.
Yeah, this year alone, April, we'll be doing sampling for EPA unregulated contaminants, and they'll be sampling much more of these chemicals in that next round. And that'll be, like Mike pointed out, an emerging issue, if they find anything else.
I have a question for the Water Commission. Where do we stand in the approval process at the town level, the town needing approval for this project?
Well, we're going to be seeking approval for this project in May at the town meeting, because the funding source has to be secured by the town before they can move forward with the state and federal reimbursement plans. So the actual borrowing won't take place, but it has to be approved in May.
Mr. Chairman, if I could point out that the questions are being asked at home or YouTube, it might be good to have people.
Thank you. So if anybody has any further questions, please come up and use the microphone.
We can put a microphone on
yeah.
the table there if,
Or just repeat the question.
okay.
Yeah, either way.
Well, we can have folks come up. We'll set the microphone.
Yeah, they should give their name and, yeah.
Just use if someone
Are
has a
there any
question,
more
we'll set one
questions,
up.
though? Yeah, I
Any
think,
additional questions? Yeah.
very, very good questions, and it's a technical problem and a technical process, and it's a moving target both as far as what's being tested for and what's the chemicals that, you know, there's 6, then there's 8, there could be 12, 15, but I think, you know, the process with the media will be to collect all that, and I think the buildings have room for expansion if down the line, if you need to add another filter to, you know, make the filtering process more thorough and cleaning up, that's built into the process, but who's to predict the future? But these are on the table right now, and we feel that with this plan in place, that Webster will be situated for a good number of years as far as the producing clean water.
I did want to mention something too. It'll come up in the rate study, but it's key that we get approval at the May meeting, because what's included in this is 0% interest to the SRF and 19.8% a discount that the state will pay for the town of Webster. So I don't know the interest rate, we don't know, but 0% interest plus $33 million is $6.6 million. We're talking approximately $8 million or so in savings if we approve it now. If we don't, we could lose those savings, much like what was involved with the high school.
Are there any more questions?
Additional questions?
Okay, we can move on.
Yeah. Next thing I'd like, before we do the next presentation, I would like to open the public hearing
Need a
formally.
motion. Need a motion to,
Oh,
I'll make a
can I-
motion to open the
open.
public hearing for the 2024 water sewer rates.
Second? Okay. Then we open the public hearing, and we'll start by Ty and Bond doing the rate study presentation.
Thank you. My name is Mike Schrader, also with Ty and Bond, and here tonight to talk to you about the water and sewer rates and the evaluation that we just completed. So, let me, oh, that's good. Okay, I'll do it the old way.
Don't forget to speak into the microphone, please.
Even with my booming voice?
That's right.
Okay. Is it, all right. I'll sit down, I'll make it easier. Okay, so, an overview, the town of Webster owns, operates, and maintains public water and sewer systems to serve its residents and businesses. And like many New England states and towns, Webster's infrastructure is old. It's almost as old as the town. The original water system was in the 1800s, and the town has been proactive in maintaining and evaluating and improving the infrastructure. And the point or the reason for that is to provide a level of service that you require, both from a customer perspective and a regulatory perspective. So it's the DPW can tell you it's a constant effort to maintain vigilance in terms of the condition and the performance of the various components of each system. So both utilities are managed as separate enterprise funds, and what an enterprise fund is it's a management best practice that uses an accounting and financial reporting to separate the costs from the water and sewer systems from the rest of the general fund. And the costs for those systems, these utilities, are recovered back from the customers through water and sewer rates, and that's why you pay water and sewer rates. The rates are reviewed annually and adjusted as needed, looking ahead, not just right now, but looking ahead the next few years, what we think is going to happen, and to be ready for expenses. The town prepares capital improvement plans on a annual basis to forecast needs and performs various evaluations so that we're not surprised by the costs and the needs. So in this case, Webster's engaged Ty and Bond to perform a rate study, partially because of the number of capital projects that we've just been talking about. So when we look at water and sewer rates, it's basically built around a pro forma, which is essentially a cash flow diagram. And we look at the past expenses, some historic, and then we project going forward. And for the expense side, it basically comes down to operating expenses, existing debt, and then capital improvement projects, which are both debt and non-debt funded. And then we look at the revenues, which come primarily from water usage, and what the trends have been in water usage, and what the volume of water that gets used. We look at the rates, and this is an illustration of the electronic model that we use to do this. We pull them together and calculate the net revenue and just look at what does it look like going forward for revenues and expenses, and then adjust rates to maintain a fund balance that's equitable to the town and can provide a buffer in case of unforeseen or changes in usage or expenses. So capital expenses are the biggest driver of rate increases, and in general, the size of the system or the number of customers is what sets the overall cost. And Webster is fairly fortunate. You have a fair amount of customers, and it's almost equal for water and sewer, which is helpful. So on the water side, and I love this picture of all the water places I've been. That's the old system that, we joke that was off the grid before there was a grid. So it just shows, they're like this beautiful town hall. It's old, and it requires a lot of maintenance and upkeep. So that was your first Memorial Beach well. And this is just a summary of the expenses that we look at projecting forward. And the bottom is just operating expenses, which is, salaries and benefits for the workers, for the water department, electricity and fuel, operation and maintenance, chemicals, et cetera. It's basically everything that goes into maintaining and operating the water system. And like everything else and everything that we experience, those costs are going up as well. And we're dealing with, some things are harder to get, or delays in production and, availability. So we forecast, we try to be conservative and realistic, but not, too, you have to find the balance between practical and, overreacting. So we make conservative estimates going forward. And then the top here, these are the capital expenses coming. And the black is new debt for debt-funded projects, primarily the water plant that we're talking about, the PFAS. And then the red are other non-debt capital investments in tools and equipment and smaller projects that are needed. And to project those expenses, we maintain a capital improvement program. And this just shows, everything from smaller items like maintaining fencing and security at water tanks, pole compactor, all the stuff that is required to operate a water system. The bigger one, like we were talking about, is that treatment plant for the PFAS, and it's the two plants. interest rate is 0%, which is the state's way of funding and helping to combat the PFAS. I don't know if we want to call it epidemic, but this new contaminant. And Webster is fortunate because as they lower it to 4, as Jeff alluded to, everybody's going to, a lot more systems are coming forward, so it's good to be in line now. What we were talking about before is we were showing the 19.8% principal forgiveness, which Webster gets because it's of its economic status. They have a 3-tier system. And what we were alluding to is there could be more. It could be in addition to that, but we just don't know what else. So sometimes previously ARPA money came in and has helped with some projects. So right now it's 19.8 is a given, right? That's the way the system's set up. For basically all projects with the SRF, it's the 0% that is because it's PFAS. So we're hoping, that you'll get additional from the 19.8. So we look at all these and, the goal is to schedule the expenses so that they occur and we're planning for them when they need to happen and that the funds are there, it's basically proactive maintenance, and that Webster really has done a nice job of staying ahead of things and watching, as their infrastructure needs arise to plan for them. So when we add and you look, it's almost a 90% increase in expenses from 23 to 27. And what we're planning for right now is just a 15% increase for FY '24. And you kind of, balance the what we see right now and getting ready, preparing for the future. Again, adjusting it every year based on actual water use, actual expenses, some things, if you get additional funding for the PFAS plants, that will go down, the needs will go down. And what that looks like is these are the rates itself. At the end of the presentation, I'll show you what the cost impacts are, the projected cost impacts are for what we call a typical residential customer. The rate structure currently is a 2-tier, or it's essentially a base charge of $36 and then a usage charge once you go over that. There's a 20% discount for senior citizens, and that's across the board for water and sewer. So similarly for sewer, that's a lovely picture my associate picked, but that is a sewer. I usually just show a manhole, but, so sewer, by its nature is more expensive. There's more parts to it, there's more, it's just more expensive in general. So you can see the operating costs are a little bit higher. Similarly, there's, some capital costs coming. The operating expenses are really the same as they are with water, the different chemicals, et cetera, but it's the same kind of concepts. And again, there's new capital expenses coming. There's even a longer list of sewer, but you can see, well, you can't see, but they're smaller, a lot of smaller items, rebuilding pumps, and like I said, it's when we talk about asset management, think of it as a constant state of decay. Things are always wearing out. Wastewater is a very harsh service environment, and things they tend to wear out. So this is an example of keeping ahead of them. There's some good proactive infiltration and inflow projects in here to reduce the amount of water that basically leaks in from groundwater, from rainwater, from connections, and just costs more money to treat at the plant. So the goal is to keep that out of there and to keep on keeping on. We have some aeration upgrades at the plant that are planned, much smaller in cost than the water project. So this is over a 5-year period. It looks like a lot, but it's actually, given the size of the system, it's pretty, I think, manageable. So again, looking at roughly a 50% cost increase. And the town had had some big investments in sewer previously, so it's, you know, a lot of it is maintaining and, you know, keeping up with the upkeep of the plant. And sometimes I think of it like an old farmhouse, that by the time you get around doing one thing, it's time to do the windows again, you know, and you just keep going around and around. And by, you know, being proactive, it reduces overall cost because emergencies cost more, and, you know, you can control your cost by planning it. So the projected sewer rate increase for FY '24 is 10%. And, again, those are the sewer rates, you know, showing each component. It's very similar. There's the same tier, and then a discount, again, 20% discount for the seniors. And there's also the flat rate is for people that don't have town water. So when we look at what the cost impacts are, this is actually always interesting because we don't want to use an average water use. I like to show what I think of as like a serving size, what it might cost your family to, you know, for water and sewer. And that's based entirely on your usage. So we actually look at, you know, the town's water use records and, you know, kind of gauge it, try to come up with something realistic so that we're not overstating or understating what the cost would be. And what we're using for a typical residential customer is a 2.5 person household using 55 gallons per day each. The actual town data suggests that it's less than that, and 60 is a national average. And you see, we think about water usage a lot because the more you use, the more it costs. And we think this is a reasonable cost. And then for the seniors, we use a smaller 1.5 person household using about 40 gallons per day each. And you can see that we're projecting the annual cost, the total annual cost. So under water, for the typical customer, it would be about $86 over the year, the 4 quarters, and for sewer, about $80. And then, you know, it's less than the 20%, or more than the 20% because we're also using less usage for the example, for the illustration, about $45. So that is, I think that's the last slide. So if anyone has questions on that, we can go through it. Like I said, when we went through it, they're doing a good job, and it was, you know, kind of going along. There's a lot of moving parts, but in general, it was, I think, pretty manageable.
One thing I'd like to point out on the water side is that projection of expenses also includes the water pipe replacement project along the way every few years, so it's
Well,
not like we're dropping
Yeah.
that project.
No, that's a good point, because, you know, one of the problems with infrastructure and America's, you know, report card on infrastructure and all that is that, you know, a lack of funding and a lack of commitment. And the commission has made a commitment to maintaining a replacement schedule. You've got some very old pipe in town, like, you know, all in New England, and there are, there's a replacement, there's another replacement, and there's a third water main replacement, and this is only a 5-year capital plan. So, like I said, it's never ending, right? You just keep chipping away at replacing and, you know, maintaining the system.
Okay, open it up for questions. If anybody wants to ask a question, please approach the microphone.
Just real quick, how old is this system?
Late 1800s, is it not?
1890?
Yeah.
Wooden pipes.
That has 1821 on it, and this was it was before, like, the electrical grid, so this was a
Steam pump.
coal-fired compressor, right? And I didn't show the picture of the pump. There's a magnificent big steam pump in there that
Impressive.
is really, I should have put a picture. It's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. That was used before, you know. when Webster was a burgeoning, industrial revolution type community.
So the 15% is, in light of everything that's going on today, a significant increase.
Yeah,
But it's something I hope that we've, demonstrated. You have little choice, you have to make the right choices, but it's not an issue of do you do it or don't you do it? We're almost mandated to do it. You don't want to look at the alternatives because they're not good.
well, and it's not discretionary spending, and, when we talk about assets, it's, we say to prevent things from happening. And you see, in the paper, you see water main breaks, flooding downtowns, and, it's to maintain your level of service and then prevent the bad things from happening from failures.
And I think people have recognized, people in the know have recognized that Tom and the staff at the Water Sewer Department are doing a great job, and they're maintaining a realistic budget, and there's no extravagance. They've shown reasonable growth, salary increases, so on and so forth, expenditure for gasoline, electricity, so on. But they've shown a reasonable approach to.
We've been mindful of the retained earnings, and we're balancing the work that we need to do and keeping a positive cash flow and trying to keep the rates in check at the same time. You mentioned, we've had two years in a row, Q3, with compliance issues, and they were just that, MCL issues or violations. And the state, who's been here a couple of times at our hearings, has been pleased with our approach to date, which is why we don't have an administrative consent order with fines and or penalties attached to it. So we're moving ahead, and hopefully we can get this resolved in a timely manner.
Come to the mic, please.
Diane Mandiel. I was wondering how we're doing with dirty water complaints, and other than line replacements, are we still doing any other, any of the ice pigging or any of that other stuff being done?
Dirty water complaints are almost non-existent. I've been here almost 2 years. I can count on one hand how many complaints we've had, and typically it's because somebody operated a hydrant without our knowledge, or a sprinkler system, or a fire pump, or maybe a hot water tank was not properly maintained and needed to be flushed. But I can tell you the new Memorial Beach plant is working very well, very well. We can see it when we do the unidirectional hydrant flushing program. We have a few hydrants that would take 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours to clear before the plant was online. And some of those hydrants are 10, 15, 20 minutes, and they're cleared up. So there's an improvement. The staff can see it, and the phone is not ringing like it was. So it's good to see.
And there's no plans for ice pigging. The hydrant flushing is probably all that's going to take. And we do know, as like with the Lake Street and tying on Main Street, that's going to disturb the system, and there's going to be, colored water going through and sediment.
Yeah, we
And when
operated.
they do Lake Street, probably the same thing, but
Yeah,
it's-
we were out here Tuesday night, and we operated a half a dozen valves here out on Main Street in preparation for next week just to verify we can get a good shutdown. We did have MAP-free call about 2 days later. They must have drew something in when we were operating the valves. That was the only complaint we got with closing those 6 valves, and I think that's unheard of in Webster, especially on Main Street with that old pipe.
Well, you missed the brownwater times, and after that, after the ice pigging,
Yeah.
the town adopted a the unidirectional flushing program, which is designed in the hydraulic model, and it's very prescriptive and, follows a routine, and they have a field application that they use that tracks the data, and it's, again, it's a best practice, it's a good way to do it, and it has worked.
Truthfully, I mean, we skipped hydrant flushing last fall because of the drought. I had no choice. So we're gonna go at it this spring. because I don't want to run into the same scenario this fall, just by chance. So our goal is to hit it in the spring this year, because the longer we go, it just gets more risky. So we got to get out there and do our maintenance. We got to stay on top of these things, and that's what we're going to try to do this season.
And is it true that we're going to be under a summer water restriction? Is the
We've
state?
been talking about that internally. The state has not announced anything. I had another
Okay.
customer reach out about a day or two back with that same question, because they were looking to redo their lawn or a garden. You know, the state has not forecasted anything. They haven't even updated any of their mapping since early February. We did rehabilitate all of our wells last year at Memorial Beach, so we're in a better spot. But I don't know if you saw in Danielle's presentation, I think our max demand last year was 2.13. We're close. It's, okay, can we get away with not using Bigelow? Can we get away without drought restrictions? I think we just need to evaluate this over the next couple of weeks and make an informed decision. We definitely will follow the state plan no matter what. It's just whether we want to do it ahead of time or not. I think we'll probably be discussing that at our next meeting.
One of the things that I wanted to mention was when we do the PFAS project, we're going to have an iron and manganese removal, I don't know if anyone noticed or not, at Bigelow, which we don't currently have. And we will also have redundancy in the system so that if there's problems where all the wells got shut down at Memorial Beach, we would still be able to pump out of Bigelow. So we're building, it's not just a matter of PFAS, we're using the opportunity to do other things with the system to make it more resilient. And also, you know, again, Bigelow didn't have as many problems with dirty water, but with the iron and manganese plant, again, that'll remove any possibility of that.
And just to be clear on this rate hearing, this will go for approval of these rates that we just discussed, and those won't hit your water bill until, well, the rates will start on July 1, but your bill in October, is it? Will reflect the new rates. So the first time you'll see that is in your October bill. There any more questions regarding the rates for the coming year?
It's everyone's opportunity before we close the public hearing, so if everyone's good, okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing if there's no more
Second,
questions.
okay, public hearing is closed. Now, we still have a meeting, so if folks want to stay, we're going to go to our regular meeting and go through the issues there. I guess the next item is to discuss the